If you ask me what's gaming's biggest obsession since the rise of indie gaming, what do you think it's going to be? Survival games, tacky horror experience, but there is another one, a subgenre that would have many names, but usually known as the simulator games, otherwise known as the mundane daily jobs in video games. Ever since the big boom that was Goat Simulator, we now have farming sim, streamer sim, car mechanic sim, thief sim, and my summer car. They come in completely different sizes and ideas, covering as many mundane jobs you can possibly think of, which got me thinking, what about the racing stuff? A thought that lasted for only a couple of seconds, as the racing genre in a sense already got its own simulators with Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, and many others since. But there was another one. What if there was a simulator about mundane jobs, mostly about driving, with a bit of racing on the side? This is Motortown Behind the Wheel. It's a weird indie game currently developed by a team of 4 people with some extremely ambitious goals. The game itself is closer to a life sim than a racing sim, with the majority of its content being about driving from point A to point B. But for now, let's focus on the main piece of content. You can usually do these in a solo world or multiplayer by joining or creating a session for people to join. It kinda works in a similar manner to how Minecraft handles multiplayer, letting players do a dedicated server or just a simple peer-to-peer connection. At the start, you'll only have this one car with a tutorial about hitchhiker jobs. Unlike the ones seen in other games, however, they don't really give out anything beyond driver EXP. The game's driving physics itself is a bit like GTA 4, without the over-exaggerated jelly suspensions. Thanks to a lot of the physics simulation, it can turn some simple drives into some of the most challenging prospects, forcing players to not just stomp on the accelerator. With 3 different driving types to use: comfort, which limits the acceleration, sport being the regular handling, and the drift for an easier time going sideways. There's options to fine-tune each handling setup in the options to suit your more specific needs as well. Next to them are 3 different assists options, from off, cruise control, to straight up autopilot, with the option to set the cruise control speed and autopilot being in AFK mode for some of the longer travels. It's also not recommended to run autopilot in a specific section of the road, as the AI pathing is not on top just yet. Since the game's launch, the map itself has been expanded tremendously. Originally, it only covered this one island section where most of the basic necessities are provided, but now there's also this massive land down below, covering some of the more treacherous off-road paths, a hidden village in the mountains, canyons, dune, and desert areas, giving a ton of room to play around with and test the game's deep handling physics, which gets an extra modifier thrown in with the rain or the very dark nighttime outside the city areas, giving the map some extremely calming experience for the longer journeys. The AI drivers of the game are also quite sophisticated. They'll often wait for you if you use your turn signals, but there's also the variation of getting impatient AI drivers that will speed up and outright try to pass you dangerously, even making some real-life radio broadcasts from the US and the BBC radios, like a whole lot of them. Adds even more immersion to the map itself. The map itself seems to be based on the South Korean island of Jeju, with a pretty similar shape, naming scheme for most cities along with their locations. The massive map by itself also grants a ton of options for routes and activities, as you'll see soon, with the next tutorial throwing us into our first job, delivery. What you can carry is determined by the car's cargo space and type, with bigger trucks allowing players to carry more items, but there's an eternal scaling to help players with smaller cars as well. And now I think we're ready to go. Remember to strap your cargo before driving off like me. The amount of payouts from these delivery jobs will usually fluctuate depending on the length, with some areas specifically giving more payouts than normal. And luckily there is no time limit, but you want to be as fast as possible for faster payouts and to stack some of that job EXP. Cargo delivery itself is actually split into even more types of variety, with the regular cargo as the basic option, food delivery with a different vehicle criteria, and the bigger options to carry fuel, milk, or cement, and the job you get from playing video games all day long, each having different payouts based on their products, with some having having specific ranges like the food deliveries usually being contained within a city area, or the live fish deliveries adding a time limit with bonuses attached. After your first cargo job, the taxi work introduction begins. The system itself is pretty simple. Get in a taxi vehicle, look up the list of clients to see the payouts and destination, then just simply pick them up and then drive. But wait, each client will often have criteria that can make the job more challenging. Some may simply ask to be driven around in a limo, others will specify how many passengers you will deliver, then there's the ones with urgency, which has a time limit, and the rest will want comfort. The blue circle below will indicate the comfort of the passengers. If the smaller circle goes red or reaches the edges of the bigger one, then they'll deduct the comfort point off, which basically just means don't turn too hard, don't brake too hard, and don't get into crashes. For dealing with these specific demands, there will be extra payouts and EXP awarded, but it's still ultimately dependent on your performance. This, in a sense, is the simplest job in the game at the moment, as you have not that much variation between a regular 4-door taxi car and the limo and no range limitation. And the payout itself is often on the lower average side, even when given destinations that are way further away. An alternative to the taxi work comes from the bus. It's counted as a separate thing since it's got its own EXP category, and it works somewhat differently in a sense. Instead of picking clients from a selection, bus driving instead puts us in a selection of bus routes to take. The most information we can get out of them is the amount of stops and potential number of passengers, as not all of them will go on your bus specifically, with a random chance to get passengers with a similar comfort criteria. This randomization is most likely done to counter the job's more consistent route setup, which will always take players throughout the scheduled bus stops. Depending on the route chosen, the amount of bus stops and stations to visit will fluctuate, with a massive payout waiting at the final stop. Unlike taxi work, however, bus driving has a ton of vehicle variety, with higher capacity, weight, and its effects towards handling. Most will be logged to either the driver level, bus level, or both. There is another thing though. With buses, since they're usually tied to scheduling, the timer itself is separated into 3 different phases. The first being too early, which means you're too fast, too late, which means you have skill issues, and on time, which of course grants bonus payouts from each passenger. These timers, however, can be very unbalanced. You'll most likely have a spare 15 seconds when reaching the next stop before the timer finally goes down to on time. And in multiplayer sessions, there's a weird desync caused by the scheduling system that may cause the first stop timer to be way too low, resulting in a single late result. Even if you plan your foot down, it's not going to be fast enough somehow. You'll probably notice the speed limit sign that has been popping up. This is tied to the game's police system, as they'll chase you down, or at least try to. It's definitely underwhelming since the game has no combat feature of any sorts, which means the cops can only chase you and ask you to pull over. If you do, then all you get is 100 cash penalty for each infraction, which isn't a lot. Or you can take matters into your own hands and deliver justice itself. Not gonna lie, this is kinda tame. The majority of police work in this game devolves into randomly assigned checkpoints for the purpose of patrolling, increasing the safety percentage of the cities, while giving around 800 cash payout per checkpoint, with the random chance of being called in to apprehend some of the worst drivers known to man. Getting a 100% safety rating doesn't seem to do anything either, at least in any obvious ways. The only thing this changes is by increasing the rate for the population to spawn in, resulting in better payouts for any jobs that you do in the area. But sadly, the patrol checkpoints themselves tend to lead you out of a zone focusing on a singular area, causing the population boost to be spread out a lot more. And this isn't the only way to increase payouts via population. The towing job at the moment is probably my pick for the hardest job due to several reasons. All of the jobs are not listed anywhere like with any other job in the game, meaning you have to manually look for job targets on the map, and unless you remember the names of each car by memory, it's hard to know whether the target itself is a regular sized vehicle or a massively sized industrial hauler, as the towing job has several vehicles, and if you happen to use a smaller one, then big packers, tankers, and whatnot becomes near impossible to handle. The payout itself is dependent on the state and damage of the target, which gets extra complicated due to some of them being flipped before they can be towed, unless the type of towing done is the simple vehicle delivery from areas like the docks, often leading connecting to specific dealerships. It definitely needs a bit more work at the moment, possibly a list that can help to know the target's vehicle size first, and possibly a bit of a boost for payouts and EXP. There are also other jobs that may be a bit more hidden than the rest within the game. Ambulance driver is only available from one location up north in Jeju, and for some reason it's classified as a taxi job, requiring taxi and racing level to be accessed. The other is an extremely rare job that is so mysterious that it doesn't even appear on the minimap. So far it seems to be the only job that leans more on the illegal side of things, called getaway driver. The gist of this one is that they will randomly spawn on the side of any road on the map. You simply get into the car with a symbol and drive to a specific location with an initial wanted level. Due to the police having weak AI, however, this is not exactly a challenge at the moment, and it devolves into a glorified taxi mission after a while. The reward for this activity is a flat rate of 10,000 cash and some racing EXP. I do hope they'll either increase the rate of spawn for these activities later down the line. In my initial 10 hours of playtime, I only managed to find it once or twice. That's pretty much most of the jobs available in the game as of currently. But there is one thing to consider: building a business empire. And for the most part, it kinda behaves like a GTA Online CEO or motorcycle club where you can add friends or other random players into your business group. And it additionally allows you to create passive income by creating routes for both bus and trading all across the map. The big downside with this is that it only covers bus and cargo trading, so unfortunately there is no way to build the Dragon of Dojima's taxi business or Roman's taxi empire.
What is wrong with these people?
The other downside to this business is the fact that you must purchase your own vehicles to be assigned for them, with 5 slots open initially covering about 5 different cars that are either eligible as a bus or cargo carrier, racking up to at least around 100k for a fully functioning business. In the case of an emergency, the option to take loans from the bank is available, but I generally wouldn't recommend it. The interest rate is pretty much borderline a scam. From there, it's mainly a very slow burn, as the game tallies the cost and profits of each vehicle depending on the route that has been set up. For buses, it's somewhat simple, as the preset route by the game can suffice, but if you want to earn more money, it's better to make your own routes. For cargo, you'd have to look up each point in the map, determine the supply and demand, and then pray the supply points will actually provide something to sell, or else the car will just drive around in circles with no profits whatsoever. As an alternative, sending cargo drivers to places like farms and then selling them to supermarkets will also cause the population numbers to go up, increasing the payout of any other jobs in tandem. What's in the game already is pretty in-depth, but it definitely needs a lot of work to be complete, as some of the points for cargo still seem to be empty, the AI can be completely bugged, and we're still missing the ability to make a taxi and towing business empire. After all this, however, what is the point of collecting all of this cash? Well, the first thing to mention is that this game has limited fast travel. We're only allowed to travel between owned houses or motorhomes, most of which will cost a whole lot of cash. If you do decide to purchase your own land, you'll need to go to this vendor to buy a blueprint of a house, or even just a garage or parking area. Fortunately, in an online server, property between players like these are shared, so the richer player can definitely help out everyone else by unlocking fast travel to a whole lot of locations. Unlocking different fast travel points in a map this big is absolutely helpful for everyone in the server, making them into a lucrative quality of life improvement just for existing. For some of you that are into a bit deeper role-playing aspects, there's the ability to buy decorations for them in some of the stores scattered all over the map, with some stores providing weird gadgets like the drone that you can play around with. The most important bit of cash use will be with these beauties. I've already mentioned how you'll need to buy specific vehicles for the businesses, but it goes a bit deeper than that. The vehicles of this game can be split into several different categories based on their primary use, and another to differentiate it as a personal use or what is considered to be a company car. Company cars are the ones that can be picked up in certain locations and businesses. They don't really have any rent cost, but any jobs done with them will result in payouts getting cut by around 30%. In exchange, you can basically drive them with no limits, and any repair costs will be free. By comparison, personal vehicles will not have any cuts on payouts, making recovering back the initial cost of the purchase a breeze, assuming you don't go flat out everywhere, racking up repair and reset costs from towing. This feature allows you to respawn with any flipped vehicle to the nearest road or garage, with the cost ramping up from being free at first to 1000 cash per every reset, making repeat skill issues into very expensive mistakes, and then we got the repair costs, which at most are pretty cheap. The damage system of the game itself doesn't seem to translate anything cosmetically. None of the vehicles will be bent, crushed, or even get dirty from any damage taken, but their handling will be affected in some ways, making them unresponsive or sluggish in some aspects. There's also the chance of your engine bursting into flame, but this is usually only achievable if you've been pushing them very hard with the sport handling. But that's not scratching the surface of what is possible. For those of you who like driving in first-person camera, there are extra options available to modify several things like the camera placement, the steering wheel position, the position and angle of each mirror. This is most likely the reason why every character model would be seen to steer the car telepathically. However, this setting is saved on each vehicle, meaning on different cars it'll reset to default settings, making it the most useful in personal vehicles. Every car can be purchased in specific dealerships as they'll always have the same stock, with most dealerships being specialized for things like buses, containers, daily drivers, or the high-class super and hypercars for personal use. Most will be a direct recreation of real-life cars with very splitting images like the Supra, Porsche, Miata, 240Z, Lamborghini, and some Hyundais, with some very bizarre level distribution. At level 10, you're allowed to drive or purchase cars like the Toyota Supra and A32. At level 20, the Porsche and an old BMW is available, and on level 30, it's the Miata and 240Z.
Fuck is this piece of shit?
Something doesn't add up here, but most of these cars come with other benefits with the upgrades, allowing them to be converted into work vehicles with the licenses, letting you turn your muscle car into a cargo carrier by installing a tow bar, or turning the supercars into super fast taxis, or using big vehicles for either cargo jobs or bus jobs, letting you use them for the passive business on the side. And to help even further, we got the actual main upgrades. Here we can upgrade the vehicle by adding more power, better radiators to mitigate overheating, better brakes, suspension to handle off-roads or heavy cargo, or to make the cars perform better for racing and drifting with the tire options, and etc. The system itself can be as deep as the overall system of the game, requiring knowledge and attention to details to make sure each vehicle is tuned to make their effectiveness as high as possible. Certain cars may also feature more of the ricey options to add preset liveries or body kits to increase downforce, or make your own livery from scratch with the editor. Now you could also take liveries from other players, but this game goes even beyond by letting you straight up copy all of the installed upgrade parts as well. It's very useful if you want to specifically copy another player's tuning or if you want to upgrade quickly. But if you just want the livery and nothing else, then you can just select that and the cost will go down by a lot. You may also want to check some of the stores around this game's map, as they can sell some cosmetics for the cars, like new headlights or even LED light strips that you can't really find throughout garage tuning. These items can be installed anywhere on the car and set up to activate based on whatever settings you want to tie it in with, giving some special aesthetics based on personal preference. Now all of these upgrades could be worth it for the game's final activity, but at the moment it's still lacking in a lot of ways. By now we've talked about the jobs and businesses the game provides, each with their own EXP and levels to indicate some form of progress, but there is another EXP that you may have caught on in the pause menu, simply named Racing EXP. EXP for these can be acquired from doing time trials in specific closed circuits with their online leaderboards or by doing drifts anywhere at any time, but the level itself as of currently doesn't really do anything besides unlocking specific race cars. The best we can do at the moment is start up a race from the menu. Unfortunately, the AI themselves haven't been given the proper necessities to be able to race just yet, so this is mainly an option for online races with other players. Otherwise, time trial is the only thing you'd be able to solo for anything racing related, which is definitely interesting to deal with due to the game's handling system. They even allowed the ability to switch handling mid-race, whether you just want to play it safe, push hard, or style on the other racers. It's at the moment kind of the end game since there's really no way to earn money from them, meaning all of the money that we've collected would ultimately be used to invest in this kind of content, which leaves us with the game's final aspect of its multiplayer. The game's strongest suit will pop out once you start joining any of the populated servers, but it goes a bit deeper than normal. You can set up or simply choose to join a pre-existing server. Just be sure to be aware of the settings enabled, as some servers tend to limit the amount of vehicles that can be spawned, or even disable NPC company drivers, which in turn disables the passive income mechanic. Houses, mobile homes, and properties used to fast travel travel are shared between players, letting everyone help one another by just simply owning these properties. It's the same deal with the businesses or jobs, as players can help others by towing their vehicles in the case of a crash, start a convoy of deliveries to the same locations, drift around the map together, compete in time trials, or just help out by joining the businesses, transforming the once tycoon-focused driving sim into a role-playing sandbox with near infinite possibilities, turning the police job into something players can do to regulate other players' reckless driving, sending supplies for factories to start manufacturing their product, which then allows another player to continue the chain of supplies, including the ability to start contracts with most cargo suppliers to essentially provide services for the businesses that can range to enabling fast travel, increasing payouts for a limited time, and it's applicable to any of its members. And that's on top of every player providing supplies to supermarkets, doing bus jobs all over the place, and boosting patrol rates, massively increasing the amount of payouts everyone receives even further than what was already available. Suddenly, every piece of content that was available previously on solo becomes even deeper and meaningful in multiplayer, in exchange of making the world itself feel like an actual living, breathing world with a working economy system. It kind of became the GT Online many of us actually hoped it would be, how every person doing their own thing would impact the world in a positive way, not just for personal gain but for everyone in the server. But of course, despite how far this game's mechanic has been, it should be noted that the game itself is still in early access. There's many things that are still pretty jank, mechanics that need to be patched, fixed, built, and finalized, because as of currently, there are a whole lot of things that are not properly explained, requiring other players with better knowledge or blindly throwing darts into a board to see what or how the economy system actually works. Plus, the game doesn't necessarily seem to have an end game beyond just collecting as much cash as possible to be able to buy anything or just to play a chill session with a bunch of online strangers. It'd be great to see what will be added for more racing content beyond the time trial, like building some motorsport career, or even owning tuning garages to fill out specific tuning requests, especially now that the game has a lot of cars that can be tuned for race specs. The last 4 years of this game's lifespan has given us this massive world and its systems to play around with, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see where this game ends up in another couple of years, proving once again just how limitless the potential can be when we have indie games driven by passion. I definitely recommend anyone to try out this game. Considering its price at around 10 or 20 bucks depending on your region, this could be the brand new obsession that fills your time and your group of friends as well. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and sub to help the channel out, and I'll see you hopefully with your cargo strap next time.